What's up, everybody? We've got Cory Heimann here today on Fulfillment Project. So great to have you in, Cory. Where are you calling in from today?
I am in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Northeast Indiana, and yeah, it's great to be with you.
Beautiful Fort Wayne. I think Indiana is probably the cleanest state in the country. I've been to a lot of states. I don't know any state that is more clean than Indiana. I love
Interesting.
it. Have you ever discovered a state better, or not better, but more clean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if it's so flat that like any like litter can just be blown away into another state. I think maybe that's what we got going for us.
I think it gets blown into Ohio on the east side
Yeah.
there. I
Yeah,
love
exactly.
that. So, Cory, you're the founder of Likeable Art. You've been doing it for 18 years, which is amazing. It's a Catholic creative project based out of Fort Wayne, where you live there. You've got a sweet studio. You're the editor of Created. You did a Kickstarter years ago that we participated in, Light of Saints. Our kids love those books. A really cool concept. And it sounds like you're working on a follow-up to Light of Saints, or you've already released it. What's that all about?
Yeah, Light of the Sacraments. So it's
Light of the
following goes through
Sacraments.
each of the seven sacraments, and you shine a light, and different miracles happen and stuff like that for each of the sacraments. So yeah, it was a fun one.
So this podcast isn't explicitly Christian. It just so happens some Christian themes bubble up and people are Christian and they like to express their faith, which I love. I'm not going to shy away from that. But talk about, so this is a faith-based book, but I want to know, when I saw the book, explain the concept of the book, how you shine the light through the back. I want to know how you thought of that.
Yeah, I'm really not the first one to think of it. There is some other similar things out there. And what I found was my kids were just bringing me interactive books, whether it's Where's Waldo or like they were never bringing me the, I would buy all these meaningful books and like that's not what they would bring me at night. You know, they'd bring me all these interactive books.
Yes.
And so, like I said, I wasn't the first to kind of come up with this light idea of shining a light. I'd seen it before, and I just had this visual of Juan Diego and how he has Our Lady Guadalupe appears on Juan Diego's tilma, and that was like the first like North Star image of like, oh, can you imagine if Mary appeared? Like that would bring that story alive in such a way, and maybe that would be the book that they bring me at night. Like, and so that was racking my brain for years, really. And then the pandemic hit, and so many clients dropped out that I had time all of a sudden. I was like, well, maybe now's the time to make my children's book that I've been thinking about. And so got that off the ground, and it's been a delight. Did the follow up, and it's been really fun. So self published at first, and then sold out way too fast, and ended up going with a publisher for a second run and the second book and everything. And it's been a really fun project.
Oh my gosh. I'll have to pick your brain later on in a year or two. I've been working on a book. I started a Substack to get a subscriber base going, and I'm putting out articles that will eventually turn into my book. So when it's time, Cory, I'll have to talk to you about that. But you guys, this book, Light of the Saints and Light of the Sacraments, I actually have to get that one. I don't have it yet. You put a flashlight behind the page and invisible images appear. If you have kids in your life, they'll freak out. And honestly, I kind of freak out. It's really cool every time. Yeah, what a cool idea. So when you're not doing children's books, Cory, what are you doing day to day? Welcome to Fulfillment Project. I'm so happy you tuned in today. If you get something out of this episode, please share it with a friend. Thumb up, subscribe, 5-star. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Substack, wherever you get your content, you can find Fulfillment Project. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah, so I'm creative director at Likeable Art. Mostly what kind of pays the bills is we do a lot of documentary video production, and we work with a lot of ministries and nonprofits on their documentary work. And that really led, now that we're 18 years in, there was a lot of work early on where we'd work on it and it would go nowhere, you know? And so after seeing that so many times, I just decided I'm going to pivot the company. When people call, I'm going to try to talk them out of working with me. And then if they're able to talk me into working with them, like then maybe we're meant to be, you know?
Yeah.
And so like with that happening, they're like, okay, you talked me out of this. I just saved a whole bunch of money. What should I be doing? And so that's led into a whole lot of consulting stuff. And so we do a lot of consulting sprints and that kind of thing to figure out how do we creatively push this mission forward. And so the creative side is really where I find I find my passion. And so a lot of times, next week we'll do a 3-day thing with a university. And so I'll bring in somebody else who kind of maybe has, we kind of share the right brain, left brain, and bring those two together. And I bring the creative side. And so, and then we run 3 days where we figure out, okay, where is this thing going? How do we creatively figure out the next projects, that kind of thing, and trying to get earlier on the ideas. That's where I really find my passion lies. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff too.
And the people you can't talk out of going with you, do you end up doing the production for them? Or have you totally
Yeah, yeah.
outsourced all that?
No, we still do production work. That's still a huge part of what we do. We put a team together according to the project, is kind of what I call it. So I'm very small. I'm the only full-time person in the studio, and we've got just a bunch of part-timers and people who come in full-time for a project for, 4 or 5 months, that kind of thing. But the whole goal is to put together freelancers to make sure that we have the best talent for that job, rather than the talent that we have hired full-time and try to squeeze them into your job and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
manipulate them into something that they're not passionate about or not the right
that's
fit for.
That's exactly right. So that's kind of how we run things. I think I feel really lucky that, for those first few years, I probably thought, oh, I'll grow a big team and whatever else. And then it didn't happen. And by the time maybe it could happen, I realized, oh, that's not what I want. That's not what I desire. I really desire to bring together teams that are perfect so that it keeps people passionate and that kind of thing. And so it's been a real delight to see that shift and be okay with it. And it's enabled me to work on these passion projects, the books and whatever else, because I don't have this huge overhead of having to keep spinning and having to talk every single person in that calls like, yeah, you should work with us because we got to fill the pipeline or whatever else. We're
Yeah.
keeping it pretty small, very, very specific and direct.
Well, and then you have to start taking jobs maybe you don't want to take
Yeah.
because you got to keep your people busy or you got to lay them off. And so this is kind of a Coreyism I just picked up. You had a vision when you started 18 years ago. You wanted to build a big team, have a big production company. It didn't happen. So you evolved naturally. In the midst of that evolution, you discovered you were actually drawn to another type of business or consulting. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't even know if it's another type necessarily, but I feel like it's much more. My goal is just to be aligned with the people that I'm working with. And so that means, first of all, I need to be passionate about it myself. Like it's got to get me jazzed up. That's why the like talking me out of it like works so well, because then they talk me back into it and I'm excited about it. So being aligned, and then being aligned, like I just don't want to be like, you're paying me to do this thing and I'm delivering. Like, that's not, I want to be going in the same direction to figure out like what's the best thing for you, and whether it helps me out or not, like that's fine. It doesn't matter. And I'll, like whatever that means of spending some time on a phone call and it doesn't pay off or whatever, like I just want what's best for these people because I think they're actually doing really great work. And so like that's the big shift, I think, in the work, where it's not me against them, it's me with them. And I don't know what that means, but in the beginning, with a first phone call, like, but I know that I just want to get in your headspace and know what your mission is and how do you forward that, and am I a part of that or not?
Yeah, well, here's what I think it means. I have a lot of experience selling. And what I find is people think they want to talk someone into something. And what I've found with my best customers is that I'm completely upfront and transparent with them right away. And it goes back
Yeah.
to kind of exactly what you're doing. It allows people to get to know you. They know where the skeletons are, they know where you thrive and where you don't. So if we are the right fit for our prospect we're talking to, then we're all in and it creates a great long lasting partnership. I haven't talked them into something that after they've paid, they're really upset because they've paid for. I overpromise, underdeliver. That's the worst case scenario. And any business that thrives is referral driven, a lot of positive word of mouth, people spreading the word. And in order to get that success, you have to over deliver on a product and be really connected with your customer base. And I think that's something we've done successfully. It sounds like something you've done successfully.
It makes such a huge difference. That's exactly right. I think whenever you like flip your mindset about what selling is, like it just makes all the difference. And you don't feel icky anymore, like because you're not
Yeah.
playing that game. It's a totally different thing where you're producing value out of nothing. And like that's a wonderful thing.
It's amazing to create something where nothing used to exist. And it's all because, like a Venn diagram, you figured out how much overlay you both had and you met in the middle where there was a lot of overlay and you have a lot to offer that they don't have, they have something to offer that you don't have, and then you come together. It's incredible. Another
Yeah.
Coreyism I'm pulling out of this, or maybe building on the previous one, is our sight is so limited when we're in a moment because there are so many factors hitting us, so many stakeholders, family life projects, where you can't see clearly. Like we're not seeing from a 30,000-foot view. We're on the ground. The fog of war is around us. So you don't really know how life will evolve. And I just had a guy on, my buddy Ike, talking about reading books that aren't relevant to you now
Mm.
because they may become relevant to you in the future. They may spark an idea that inspires you to do something in the future. And you had a vision for your business and it's evolved, Cory, into what it is today. Who knows in 18 more years where your business will evolve to? Maybe you haven't even seen or had the opportunity that's going to be an inflection point for your life, your family, your business. So I think for myself, I'm like, okay, remain open minded. Don't just try
Mm.
to become like, of course, I want to become the best version of myself today, but don't limit myself to today. Open my
Yeah.
mind and be open for the flower to grow and bloom.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing because it's hard to keep, to have that in mind and not have shiny object syndrome. Like both, keep both, you know what I mean? Like willing to pivot, open to where things are leading. And I'm one that's like very attracted, like, oh, what's the new thing? That's interesting. Let me try that. Let me try,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I forgot about like this core thing that I'm like called to. And so like finding that is just really important and weighing both sides of that.
You got to protect the mothership. That's a Coreyism. And I'm going to extrapolate this a little more. You were talking about it in the sense of your business and your work. But I think you may also agree here like the things that are most important to us, our values, our family, and even the core pieces of our business that make up the foundation of our lives. Without those things, we would not have peace. We have to protect those. You see people, I've witnessed people neglecting their family because they're chasing a promotion or they're chasing something. And then they get that thing, but they've lost their family. And what's it all for? I read a quote
Yeah.
by this guy, John Savage. He said, the most successful person at work is a failure if they're not successful at home. And I thought, whoa, that's a very grounding message to just always remember first things first.
And it's so hard not to give up on, like, it's hard, like I've had to see my life in seasons and know like I have a lot of ideas and some of them are not this season's ideas, and being okay with that and putting them on the back burner and being like, okay, which ideas fit this season of my life with young kids and everything like that, and which ones are like those are for later seasons, and then figuring out when to pull out different ideas has been a challenge and a blessing for sure.
So, talk to me. You're talking to a budding podcaster. And what's interesting about this is I run a pretty high octane business. We generate tens of millions of dollars of revenue. I've got a team, I've got a young family. And I felt called to start putting out messages because I see people all around me. I get to interact with dozens of people a week, hundreds of people a month, thousands of people over my lifetime so far. And
Yeah.
I'm still a young man. I see so many people wanting more. And so I wanted to bring
Yeah.
people like you on. If all of us share our little pieces of the puzzle, maybe we can put the puzzle together to experience fulfillment in the busyness of everyday life, to reorient ourselves. And what's unique about that is I wake up and I do my family life. I pay myself first with my family time, my journaling, my reflection time. Then I go to work. I work a big day. And then I come home and I've got the podcast on my mind. Or if I take a break during work during the day to take a walk around the block, I'm thinking about my podcast. I'm writing articles. I'm prepping for interviews. I'm following up from interviews, editing them. You've probably heard the visual. There's rocks in life, then there's pebbles, and then there's sand, and it fills everything in. I
Yep.
feel like this podcast has turned into the sand of my life, where I feel like I
Uh,
have absolutely no freedom and no silence in my mind because every moment of available free time, I'm planning, I'm executing, or I'm reflecting and editing an article or a podcast. As a creative like you, is that a frenetic way of life? Are you always like that? Or have you figured out some way to box things in so you have projects and you're able to space them out a little better?
Yeah, so I'll say this: I don't have it figured out. That being said, as far as like some things that have been really helpful to me are, first of all, like Pope Francis talked about wasting time with your kids, and that
Yeah.
has like haunted me. That like quote of his has like haunted me of like, because I'm doing the opposite of researching or whatever, it's sticking an earbud in or in like during free moments or whatever it is, trying to learn. Just the idea of like, no, this is my moment to waste time. And if I'm not wasting time, that's not success. Like, and that's been helpful, but I'm still struggling with it, to tell you the truth. And then some other rules as far as like trying really hard to do a 9 to 5 as much as I can, and trying to turn it off. We were talking, I think, before we started recording about like I moved out of the house. I've got a studio. Like driving here and then driving back home is like my uncompressed time. Sometimes I'll make a phone call like unrelated to work to a sibling or a friend or something like that, and in that drive and just like try to reset and be like not at work whenever I try to visualize that moment that I walk into the door. Like I think about that moment a lot and like what I want that moment to look like, and not and then I think about the things that I can backfill my life to make that moment that moment. Does that make sense? Like if I want my kids to say, "Dad, I missed you," like I've got to do things that would make them miss me, like and play with them. You know what I'm saying? Like so like I need to like fill my life to like make that moment. And not that like that moment is not make or break, but I think about that moment a lot, if that makes sense. Like of what kind of dad I need to be to make that moment work. And then I try to
Perfect
go to
sense.
and then the last one is I try to go to bed with my wife every night. Like we like go to bed at the same time, like all of that kind of thing. I think that makes a big difference. Like so those are the few like North Stars that I try to keep in my head.
Wow. I want to reiterate those and maybe unpack them a little more. Wasting time with your family. That's funny enough. That's a concept my mom has been saying my whole life. It's
Mm,
good to waste time with people. And it's built this. I'm working on an article called Inefficient Efficiency because sometimes the most efficient thing you can do is be inefficient, wasting time,
mm,
sitting with someone,
right.
being on
Okay.
the ground with your kids, getting a coffee with a friend, single focus, not multitasking. I'm all in the moment. I love that. The second thing you said, I think just separating work and home, right? Like when you go to work, you're at work and then you travel home,
Yeah.
which is brilliant. It feels like some people when they're at home, they're thinking about work, and when they're at work, they're thinking about home. And it's like if you just get your mind where your feet are, then when you're at work, you're working. When you're at home, you're at home. And then I love that third thing you said is backing into what you want. And that requires reflection, which I focused on a lot on the podcast because I don't think people reflect nearly enough. But if you want your kids to say, "Dad, I missed you," well, what do you have to do to get them to miss you? Like you got to back into that. So I love how intentional you are, Cory. And of course, no one's perfect. But the fact that you're working on these things, I think, is a sign of perfection. And I think my definition of perfection has evolved over the years too. Perfection isn't doing everything perfectly, it's consistent effort at working
Mm.
towards the best version of myself.
Taking
Because that
notes.
bar keeps moving further and further away, the better and better you get.
That's interesting. I'm taking that with me for sure.
Bam. Bam, baby. Value add. Here we go, Cory. So hit me with I mean, we're a couple minutes in, we're already firing on all cylinders. Hit me with your Samsonite campaign. So I saw this campaign on the internet and
Yeah.
the videos captured me. I mean, you are, if people listening haven't seen Cory Heimann's work, go to likableart.com, check out his LinkedIn. Um, and I hope in a minute you'll tell us other places people can find your stuff, Cory. But you are so engaging. Like I had a guest on, Bridget Nohara, and she, with her words, she paints a picture and an image, and you are there just by her articles she posts and the way she speaks. With your videos, not all videos are created equally, and you can create such a sense of emotion with your videos. And Samsonite, I mean, we're talking about a briefcase here. It's not like we're talking about someone dying or something that is naturally emotional. How do you, well, so two questions here. One, what's the deal with the Samsonite campaign? And number two, how do you create emotion out of an emotionless subject?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to answer your second question because this specifically, the core of this is so emotional to me. It's been a story that I've kind of wanted or needed to tell for probably almost 20 years that it's been racking around in my brain. And so it's very much a now or never kind of thing. So what I mentioned earlier was this idea of trying to build up Runway to pull off passion projects. Yeah. And that's where those three books that you mentioned came from, is build up some runway, make this project, and then launch it. And not just doing client work, but also doing these passion projects. So the
Yeah.
big audacious passion project is this project that I'm trying to get off the ground now. And it's that plane that you're not sure if it's going to take off or not. And like, I'm in the middle of it. I was just talking with some people who are working with me. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Steal Like an Artist, but
No.
Austin Kleon has a graph that he talks about every creative project, and like, this is going to be great, and then this is awful, and then Dark Night of the Soul, and then it climbs out of the hole. And I'm glad I did it, and it's not as good as I thought it would. It's this, and I'm kind of on my way down where I had the heights, and now I'm like, all the questions and everything else. So basically, the story starts with my dad. My dad was in Vietnam, and he was in a helicopter, and the pilot looked back and he said, brace yourself, we're going down. There's no seats in this helicopter. He's leaning up against the pilot seat. Helicopter crashes, everybody survives. The guy beside him goes to run. And my dad just grabs his collar as he's screaming, let me go, this thing's going to explode, like worried that this helicopter is going to explode. And luckily, my dad had some training he was never supposed to have. He was a lawyer in Nam, so he's never supposed to have some of this frontline training that he did have. But that in a helicopter crash, you don't run. You wait because the helicopter blades are still spinning, but they're bouncing on the ground and they'll chop you off. And so eventually this is communicated in all the chaos. They wait, they see the helicopter blades stop. They go to get out, and my dad grabs the briefcase that he's leaning up against. And the back of that chair had gone into the briefcase, which would have been his back, which likely wouldn't have killed him, but it would have been enough that he wouldn't have been able to have the strength to grab the guy beside him.
Yeah. So that briefcase potentially saved the dude next to him
Yeah,
and potentially saved your dad from being maimed or a spine injury or
yeah.
something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. And so my dad comes back from Vietnam. He writes Samsonite a letter that says, "Hey, here's the story of this briefcase that I was sitting on. Thanks so much." And they wrote him back saying, "Thanks for your service. Here's the best briefcase we make," and sent him this briefcase. So this was the legend told in my family growing up, this like crazy story. And that briefcase became my thing that I would carry around everywhere. I would put, like, I got into magic, and I would put all my magic tricks in this briefcase and do shows. And I would take it to school as my backpack. And then eventually, whenever I got into filmmaking, it started carrying all my batteries to fuel all my filmmaking work. Right. And so the goal is that I kind of, I didn't take on any creative work this summer, to just take it off and purely spend the summer publicly pitching this idea to Samsonite. That it starts with that story, and I want them to fund a docu-series an adventure series of, my question is, now I've got 5 boys going on 6 boys. My wife is pregnant with our 6th boy. And my question,
Congratulations.
thank you. If you need anything broken, we're open to it. We can break anything. We're really good at that. But anyway, so my question is, now as a dad of this varying ages boys, of like, how can I give my boys good baggage? We think of fatherhood baggage, and that's always a negative. And my question
Whoa,
is, how
baby.
can I give them good baggage? And so the docuseries is an episode where I go on a trip with my dad, and we try to find the guy who was sitting beside him. Is he still alive? What's that story? And then I go on a trip with each one of my boys, trying to meet up with great dads along the way. So, go to Tennessee and meet up with James Shaw Jr. is one of the dads I'd like to meet up with. And so James Shaw Jr. is this guy who was in a Waffle House. He was in the bathroom and he heard shots ringing out. And so he runs out of the bathroom. There's this naked man with this rifle shooting up this Waffle House, and he just tackles him, wrestles the gun out of his hands, and saved who knows how many lives. But what strikes me is the next day, there's a reporter, and the reporter's asking him all these questions. He's got his hand all bandaged up from the heat of the gun, and she's asking him all these questions, and then she asks him, like, "Did you have any combat training? Like, how did you have the courage to do this thing?" He's like, "Nope, no training whatsoever, but I do wrestle my daughter to bed every night. And that's way harder than this." And that, like, line has been drilled in my brain for the last 7 years since I heard him say that. And every night I'm putting these kids to bed, I'm like thinking like this is worth something. I'm exhausted. I'm so ready to scream, but I'm training for something and I don't know what it is. And this is worth like getting like together and being a good father in this moment. And so like that guy has like haunted me. So you imagine I go with my kid who's kind of his kid's age, and we're on in Tennessee, there's the world's largest underground lake. So it's like this lake in this cave, and we're on a boat in this lake having a conversation about fatherhood and sharing that story and how much he meant to me and that kind of thing. And so each one of those, going to New York City with my kid who's autistic, who loves Pokemon Go, and I want to meet up with a dad who is autistic and a son who's neurotypical, the opposite of me and my son, and have that conversation, give my son an example of an autistic dad, and have a better understanding of like how I can treat him better and see him more at fully and all of that kind of thing. So all these little adventures, telling all these little stories along the way. So that's the hope. That's the goal, is to get this thing. And the goal is to get Samsonite to fund it by the end of the summer. So we're working on it. We're, like I said, like, we're putting out a whole bunch of like social media, little short films and that, telling little pieces of the story at a time. And so
How
it's
do
been fun
you
and wild.
get how'd you get the dads on the did you just cold email them, DM them? How do you set this stuff up with the dads across the
No, that's
country?
what I'm in the middle of. I haven't set up any of that. So I'm just telling these stories that this is the part of it. It's like it's in public pitching the show and trying to get it together. So I'm telling the story of James Shaw Jr. I haven't met this man at all. He's just haunted me for the last 7 years. And so I'm publicly saying, does anybody know this guy? I want to meet up with him and have this conversation. And like, so I've got a whole list of people of the people I want to meet up with, or the kind of person or whatever else. And so I'm making this in public of saying I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying. And I have a filmmaking background. What I do know is how to direct films. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, yeah,
I do
yeah.
know how that. Do I have all the connections? No, but I'm publicly like we're on Riverside right now, which is recording our call. Like this is the app that I've been using for every call. So I've been calling TV producers and everything like that, having conversations. And so I do it all. It's all recorded. So I've got all this backlog of all these recordings with different people and things like that. And I'm just slowly trickling it out as far as where this story is going. I don't know. And it's not funded yet, but I'm trying.
It will be funded. It is
Oh,
so
thanks, Andy.
juicy. It's so I can't believe that the image is in your head and it's going to happen. It just hasn't happened yet, Cory. And that is I saw that first video and it hooked me so hard, and now I'm like refreshing the page waiting for you to put up the next little nugget of your
Oh,
journey
thanks, man.
here. And
Thanks. I really appreciate that.
from someone that has cold called people for literally over a decade, I appreciate the struggle. That is not to try and make something happen out of thin air is a joy that most people in their lives never get to experience. And wow, I'm going to put a bookmark in that because I've never thought about it quite that way before. But if you're listening and you have never created something out of nothing that has been really exciting to you, do it before the year is over. Figure out what you want to do and then make something out of nothing, because that's what Cory's doing, and that's what as a person, for better or for worse, that's what you're doing all day long, generating something
Yeah.
when there's nothing there.
Well, I'm not your example of doing it in a year. Like I said, it's been almost 15 to 20 years that it's been cooking, and I've been trying to figure out what is the story I'm trying to tell. But it feels like it's a now or never kind of moment.
It's going to happen. It reminds me of I'm fresh off a podcast with Ike. I mentioned him earlier, and his story of starting his accounting firm, very different than you, was cold called 50 people to try and bridge the gap into his own firm. He got one maybe. And his is a story of turning a maybe into a yes. And that was his bridge into starting his business. So if there's a crack in the door, I know you'll take the opportunity, Cory, and it'll be a beautiful thing. A beautiful thing. And the audience, well, I am part of your audience and I'm loving it. So I can only imagine everyone else is. I want to pivot a little bit to a different topic. But while we're here, I mentioned your website and LinkedIn. Cory, if people want to see your stuff, where is the best place for them to see that?
Yeah, likeableart.com, and then Likeable Art on all socials. So TikTok,
Got it.
Instagram, Facebook, Likeable Art.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's something you could teach me too. I suck at social media. I was off of it for 6 years, 100% nude in the social media game. And I don't know if that was the best way to say that, but then I started this podcast. I'm like, oh, I got to get the word out there. So I tried to fire some stuff up, and I'm a man. Anyway, that's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah, I don't know if I'm your man, but yeah, I'll share anything I do know, but I
I
don't know if
want to
that's
pivot. I want to pivot to something you said earlier, which was you didn't take any work this summer to create space for your passion project. And that hit me for so many reasons, Cory. Number one, I'm going to say something. It's kind of bold. Something usually occurs to me that's pretty bold every episode. And I try to just say it, draw a line in the sand. And there's always nuance, and it's always a little harsher than it seems. But it's easier to talk about something when there's a clear line in the sand than when you just make it all fuzzy, to be everything to everybody. So here it is. Most people aren't passionate about anything. Most people are bored. They're dying. They're watching way too much Netflix. They're on their phone too much, living through someone else's life. And when they turn the phone, the TV off, they look in the mirror, they feel dissatisfied. And when you said you took a whole summer to work on something that's been cooking in your mind for 20 years, I feel like it takes a lot of courage to create that space, to jump out into the chasm when there's no guarantee Samsonite's going to fund this thing. Your passion project may come to nothing. So, number one, how did you have the courage to make that jump, to clear your calendar? Most people, number one, don't have passion. And number two, if they did have a passion, they would say, I don't have the time. I'm too busy. I got kids. I got a job. I got this. I got that.
yeah, how did I that's a good question. I don't know if I have a great answer because I don't to tell you the truth, I don't know that I'm nailing it. And what I mean by that is I think I should have probably done it a year ago. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I probably put it off for a full year when it didn't need to be in
Yeah.
some ways. And so it took a lot to build up that courage. I think the fact that I've taken some smaller bites of passion projects and some of them have worked and some of them I'm not even bringing up the ones that didn't necessarily work. But I poured but enough courage and honestly, some of those passion projects have turned into enough like where there is some passive income, whatever that means, but like where that money came in enough to be like, okay, like have a runway. I can do this. I'm called to do this. And like that train of thought and building those things, those smaller things first to say, okay, I can do this. And just in general, as a business owner, stop thinking about things, finances, and in blocks as far as building upwards. What I mean by that is how many, when you're starting out, you're like, oh, I need to buy a laptop. And that's like the block you start with $1,000 for a laptop or whatever. I need to
Yeah.
buy a camera. Like you're thinking about these upward blocks of building and spending and investing, whatever it is. And then I completely like toppled that to think about everything as runway. You know what I'm saying? Like, how long can I do things that I'm passionate about before I run out of runway and my kids aren't eating? Like, okay, like let's figure everything out in direction. And so everything I spend is making that runway a little bit shorter, and I can't
Yep.
do like whatever I'm passionate about. So right now I have like at one point I had nice cameras and gear. Like now I haven't upgraded any of that stuff because I care more about runway and doing passionate stuff. And then I just bring in the DPs that have all the equipment for the projects that are needed. And again, I'm bringing in probably less work than ever as far as just quantity of projects,
Yeah.
and they've led to bigger projects or whatever else because I'm worried about that runway and doing what's best for that because I care and I want to fit in those passion projects. So kind of changing my schedule in that way and changing the way I budget in that way has been really helpful to be able to say, okay, this is the summer that I'm doing this.
Wow. I love that. I love that because it's so practical and it's so real. And one of my Coreyisms I'm pulling out of it is a lot of us wait too long because we're scared. We got a lot going on. But just because you missed the perfect window doesn't mean you can't start today or tomorrow. Like the perfect time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. Next best time is today. So I applaud you for jumping into it, Cory. And thank you for your realism. It's step by step. Another Coreyism I'm pulling out here is you don't have to have it all figured out at the beginning. Things unfold as you pursue the passion. So if you have something in mind that you want to pursue, you don't have to see the finish line. Take the first step and let it unfold. And then you'll see a little more clearly. Then you can take the next step. My example, because I'm not creative like you and I don't have that type of passion project, but I read this book, The Comfort Crisis, and he talks about doing one really hard thing a year,
Mm,
and they call it a misogi. It's a Japanese ritual that goes back, I don't know, a billion years. And what I realized in my life, Cory, is that for the last almost 20 years, I've been working. And then for the last 4 years, we adopted our first child 4 years ago, our second one last year. And the years, I don't know if you've experienced this, they blend together. What happened last week, last year, 10 years ago, it all kind of feels like one thing. And one thing I love about the Misogi is it's an anchoring moment to that year. So, like the year I
mm,
adopted either of my boys, I have a lot of memories from those years because it's all
yeah,
anchored to the adoption of my boys. But the other years were just kind of bland because I was
yeah.
just working away, like everyone, just working away, giving my best moments to the man. And that's a little dramatic. But anyway, I thought if I do a Misogi, if I do something insane once a year, I'll be able to anchor memories from that year into that. So this year, I ran a marathon. I'm not a runner. I haven't been a runner. And the whole point of a Misogi, he says in the Comfort Crisis, is it has to be so hard, you may not complete it. If you know you're going to
Mm,
complete it, it's not a Misogi. There's got to be like a 50% chance you fail. And
wow.
so, like a half marathon, I was pretty sure. When I started running, a mile was really, really hard. A couple miles was like the furthest I'd run. But I knew I could do a half marathon. I knew a half marathon was a guarantee. But when I thought about 26 miles, I was like, that's really insane. And it changed my whole year. And I'm framing up like my bib and my little medal. And I'm gonna build a Misogi wall in my office where it's like these
I
are
love this.
the anchors of each year. And it's given me life, man. It's given me life. And this podcast is a passionate thing I'm doing. And what's crazy is it doesn't take away from my family and my work. It actually infuses a lot more joy and a lot more energy in it because I'm feeling energized and vibrant as a person. I'm getting so much from these conversations and from this extracurricular work in the evenings and the mornings and throughout the day that I think I'm actually, I'd be curious to ask the people 360 around me, but like, I think I'm actually bringing more to the table in everything I do. So, anyway, I just love that you're creating space for your passion project. It's calling me on, like, yes, yes, I want to remain passionate about something. And if the listeners, if you're not, if you are passionate about something, but you're not exercising the passion or expressing it in a regular basis, and that is a different thing to different people, do it. Do it. Start acting out on a passion. It will make your whole life better.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And I think it's, I don't know about you with family life and everything, but it can be really hard. It can feel like survival mode a lot of the time. You know what I'm saying? Like with all the things and all the juggling. And so to think of this audacious goal or whatever it is, like on top of all the things you got to accomplish already, can feel crazy. But I think your point, and I don't know, I need to study up on what is it called again?
The
The
Misogi.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so I need to study up on it. But I wonder because I feel like wherever the walk of life is, that 50% failure doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take a ton of time, but that it's audacious in some way or another, and it's stemming out of passion. Like I think that's really interesting, and I love it. Yeah, I definitely want to read that book.
Yeah, well, and even if you fail, you win because you went
Yeah,
through that process. Like even if the Samsonite thing doesn't work out for you, you are still a better person at the end of the day than had you just not started it because it's probably not going to work anyways.
yeah,
Like you have
and
grown,
it's
you will have made connection.
yeah, yeah, and it's going to open up some sort of door for something. I'm confident of that, and I think even sharing the failure is like a part of it. And so yeah, yeah, so yeah, like I said, I launched. I was very excited, and now it's like you have all those fears of like failure or whatever else. Like I'm in the middle of that, and I'm proud to be in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying? Like we're going out later today to film some more stuff for it, and like yeah, I'm excited for it. I don't know if I'm just wasting my time and spinning my wheels, but like I wanted to do this. And honestly, I will figure out a way to do this. It might not be the way that I have envisioned exactly right now, but I will find a way to tell the story in some way or another.
You just said something, Corey, reminded me of Braveheart. Every man dies, not every man truly lives. And people that are too scared to fail or they avoid suffering and struggle at all costs, man, you can't live. You can't live if you're avoiding suffering. You can't live if you're not taking chances and if there's not a chance to fail. I mean, it's the thrill of life to jump off the edge. And man, you're just so inspiring. You're so inspiring, Cory. This is
Oh,
amazing.
thanks, Andy.
I'm feeling fired up. I want to go climb a mountain or
Right back
something.
at you.
So, okay, you said something too I want to hook into because it's the reality. And I think you're the perfect specimen and I relate because life is really hard. It's not like I have an open agenda every day to pursue these things, and everyone listening is the same. You're stacked up. You've got work, you've got family, you've got sports, you've got kids. It's very hard to find the time for this stuff. And I don't have the answer. All I know is if you don't identify it as something you want to do, the time will never create itself and it won't identify itself. You need to
Mm.
take time, figure out what you want to do, and then figure out a crack in the schedule where you can put it in and you go from there. There was one point on my long runs where I was waking up at 3 a.m. running through the rain to get my long runs in because my wife said, "Hey, I
Mm.
want you to do this. I support you. I want to support you, but it can't take too much family time. Like I don't want you gone for 5 hours on a
Yeah.
Saturday, you know?" And so to make it work, I had to do some crazy stuff to fit it in, and it was really hard. I had to go to bed early, blah blah blah. There's a domino effect to all these choices, but I'll tell you what, if I could do it again, I would, and I'm looking forward
Yeah.
to the next time I get to do it again.
That's awesome. That's really great. I love that.
Dude, so Cory, you're a young man just like me. Fulfillment. I don't know if this is a fair question, but I'm going to lob it out as kind of the summation of the convo. Are you fulfilled? What do you feel like fulfills you most? What do you feel like you could do to become more fulfilled?
Okay. What comes to mind immediately, and maybe I need to think about it a little bit more. Like I've had this like motto that I've gone by since college, and it's just been I'm content with never being content. And that like hunger is like really fulfilling. You know, like hunger it like yeah, a meal tastes better when you're hungry and I'm hungry. You know what I mean? Like I
Baby.
it gets me going. And so
A
uh
dog in a cage is bothered by the fleas. A dog on the hunt isn't worried about the fleas.
yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, as far as fulfillment goes, like yeah, I'm only as fulfilled as the chase for the fulfillment and the desire and going after it. And so yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Quickly, I just want to anchor in here. Your phrase in college was you're content with never being content, right?
Yeah.
And I have come to the realization, I came to the realization when I turned 30 that you don't make it in life. I thought as a young boy and coming into a young man that like one day I would be my dad. I always visualized my dad as having made it. He was like a career guy, family, kids, the deal. And
Mhm.
as I talked to him more openly as I came of age, I realized he never felt like he made it. That was just my
Mhm.
perception as his son. And so I love your idea of being content with not being content because I think that's our journey until the day we die is just constantly looking ahead
Yeah,
while trying
and
to
I
become the
think
best version of ourselves and live in the moment, but always looking ahead. I don't know if that is a paradox or if I'm a hypocrite or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to know, like, I think comparison is a thief of joy. I think that that's true, and that like I can tell you a story that makes me sound very successful and made it, and I can tell you another story of like that how much that I don't have my shit together and how like how much I'm struggling in this way and I've squandered this opportunity and I've you know what I mean like messed this up like and I think as a storyteller especially like we're always shaving things to make it understandable to other people and so
Yeah.
whatever you think about someone else like that's a shaved off piece of their full story, and there's a whole nother side to that. And so like you're not alone in having that in yourself, like because you can tell me a story that sounds like complete success, and
Under.
you can tell me one that doesn't sound like that at all, you know, like and I think every person has that in them, and so yeah, being okay with that I think is important.
Totally. And you may have already answered the second part to my question, but if you could do something to feel more fulfilled, what would it be?
Oh yeah, I think. I mean, honestly, just earlier this week, I sat down with my therapist, and it was my first therapy meeting in a long time, and we were talking about exactly that. And I was just talking about like I just keep making bad small choices. Like there's just a lot of them, and so if I can nick away at those like crappy small choices, and like I I think we are talking about putting in a headphone in the moment of that I could be connecting with a child, like
Yep.
I'm doing dishes and I could call up a kid to like, hey, sit on the counter and just tell me about your day. And instead I throw in a headphone. Like those little decisions like that, those are the ones that are leading me away from fulfillment for sure.
And life is the little moments. I've been focusing a lot on this in my articles. Is like we always think of the peak moment, like you releasing the Samsonite video, but like all the small moments that go along into that journey are the actual moment. And like your
Yeah, man.
kids, you think of the big moments, the big trips, the big convos, but really it's the small moments, getting on your hands and knees, nose to nose, forehead to forehead, wrestling around, talking to them. It's the little stuff, Cory. I'm right there with you, man. It's being aware, waking up to the present moment, and just like the little teeny stuff. Cory, I'm so grateful for you. You get the last word. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up today?
I just appreciate you, Andy. Keep it up on your end, and just don't be afraid to make stuff.
Amen, brother. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning into Fulfillment Project. Like, subscribe, 5 stars, share it with 100 friends. Chances are you're thinking of someone right now that you're like, oh man, this would resonate with them. Share this episode with them right now before you switch your attention to something else. Thank you so much. Have a great day. See you next time. Thank you so much for listening to Fulfillment Project. If you got something out of this episode, please share it with a friend or 100 friends. You can subscribe to Fulfillment Project on Substack, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. Please rate us 5 stars and leave a comment. See you all next time.